Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50. Today we're here to talk about how to convince your spouse to see a financial advisor.
Thanks, Dallas. I had some feedback come through about the podcast through the official channel, which is podcast@mo50.com.au.
I like the way you said the official channel as though there's a back office team of people. It's just a different email inbox that comes through to you that you check. So
we have a Twitter account, and we have this. We have
we've got all sorts.
What's a Slack? We have a Slack channel.
Do we?
We have none of these things.
No, I was going to say.
No, we're real old.
Low tech. Yeah. If you need to get in touch with the podcast, you email podcast@mo50.com.au. That's it.
So this lady contacted us and said, hey guys, I've just stumbled across your podcast. She said that she loved it, and she listened to the recent episodes and was going back through and starting at one. Yeah. The second paragraph of her email said, I'd really love to book a meeting. My husband doesn't want to see a financial advisor, and she went on to say, should I just book a meeting for myself? Or do you need to come in as a couple? I actually replied to her and said, thanks for the feedback. Obviously, we would advise against seeking financial advice on your own if you are a member of a couple. There's plenty of, I guess, analogies we could use there. It's like rowing a boat with one oar. It's just one of those situations where if you're not on the same page, you just can't gain
traction,
nearly as much traction as you need.
Yep.
So I went back to her and said, look, what we would suggest is that you talk to your husband and book in for a 1 hour Zoom meeting with us. I can understand people's reluctance to walk into a financial planner's office. We suggested, like we suggest for anyone that reaches out and wants to take the first step, that we book a 1 hour Zoom meeting with them. So they're not even in our office, and it's at no cost nor obligation. So it's the starting point. But it got you to thinking about this topic.
It did. It did. So I think that's. You sort of touched on a couple of things there. So, firstly, I guess to explain, as you said, why. I guess we would see it as self-explanatory, but it probably isn't. Why it doesn't tend to work, and that's why we have it as a bit of a rule within our business that we don't meet with one member of a couple and not the other. And we've done it. We've actually, and this is through trial and error. We've done this in the past. We've previously had clients where someone's come in and said, I'm happily married. We run our finances together. A bit separate, but basically, I want financial advice, and my husband doesn't. It actually does tend to be more that way, doesn't it? Yeah. I'm trying to think now if there's any time when a husband, not a wife, has come in. But and we've tried to make it work in the past, and it just hasn't, as a rule. I don't have any clients that have been able to sort of work through that. And I think that's, the analogy of being in the boat analogy is probably a great one, because it's one of those things where you get frustrated at the other person for not rowing at the same pace or in the same direction or trying to do the same thing. But one of the first things we talk about with people is, where is it that you actually, where do you see yourself now? Where do you see yourself ending up? Where do you want to be in the future? And if you see where you want to be, and you know where you want to be in 10 years' time, and you know what you want your lifestyle to look like, and you're wanting to make changes and take action now and get yourself in that position, if you've got a spouse who they don't even have the same idea of where you want to end up, it's very hard, because you're trying to push the unit in that direction.
Yeah.
And often, it's not because they're trying to sabotage or anything. It's just that they don't have that same vision. They don't have that same goal. They're not heading in that direction. They have a different idea of where they want to be in future. And if anything, I think it leads to more arguments than if you just both didn't have that mindset of where you want to be in the future. So you kind of end up in a tricky situation where, you know, you can see the whole picture. You can see why you want to do these things, why you want to save more or spend less, or why you want to, you know, make changes to your super fund, or why you want to do different things, and they just can't. And it's there's no real way around that tension other than through it, and other than to get both of you on the same page, I don't think.
Yeah, and we're certainly not marriage counsellors,
No.
but the process that we go through, very often, in fact, most of the time, a couple that come to see us, we just through the process that we go through, gets them talking about things they've never spoken about before. And that's true of even the best communicators.
Yeah.
They just haven't gone through that formal process of actually sitting down and working out what they want to do in retirement, when retirement is, and how much they'll need. I'm just thinking, I've got
a couple who are clients of mine, and it's funny because we often meet on a Saturday morning and we might meet at 9 o'clock, but the joke is that after every meet we'll get there for an hour, and they're really good communicators. As you say, they're really good communicators. But often in that meeting we're talking about, I'm sort of raising things that they haven't really thought about and talked about between them, and they both kind of have an unspoken thing in the back of their mind, and it's sort of only getting raised the first time that meeting. And at the end of that meeting at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, they often say, right, well, the local pub's an early opener that's a couple of hundred metres down the road, and they go, right, well, we're going to have to go and sit down and go to the pub and have a beer at 10 o'clock in the morning and nut this out and sit down and we need a drink to calm the nerves now that we've talked about this for the first time, and to actually talk through it, because it's really only raising those sorts of things. And that's I think, like we've said before, someone's situation, and particularly for a couple, it's a very dynamic thing, and it's changing all the time. And so that's not a one-off conversation. And like I say, for this couple, most times when we have a meeting, we're raising those things that they're then going off and talking about and thinking about between them. And so it doesn't tend to work if you're only meeting with one member of the couple, because I think that, I'm guessing here, what would probably happen is they go home and they go, right, well, I think we need to be here, and I think we need to do this, and we need to do that. And the other person hasn't come along for the journey and is kind of going, what are you talking about? What do you mean? I don't even know why. I don't know why you think we need to end up where you're talking about, and I don't know how any of these 5 actions that you want to take have any link to that end point either. So I think that's unfortunately the first bit is that I don't know. Yeah, there may be some value that you get out of meeting with a financial planner as only one member of a couple, but I think that it's your energy would be far better spent on having a conversation with your spouse and getting them on board with you to go and meet with a financial planner, rather than go and meet with a financial planner on your own. Is I guess my first thoughts.
Yeah. So what do you so you have a spouse that just doesn't want to.
Yep.
So what would you suggest, Els?
So my first thoughts on this were, and you touched on it a minute ago, Mike, when you said you understand why people don't necessarily want to go and meet with a financial planner. The first thing that I would say is to actually dig into, don't just assume that your spouse is being difficult, which might be hard because maybe your spouse is being difficult a lot of the time. I am a difficult spouse, so I understand that this is a common thing, particularly for men. If you're a woman going, my husband's just being an old bullhead, because that's what he does. You raise a point there, and I'll let you elaborate on this a bit more, but for a lot of people, there are reasons, whether they're conscious or subconscious, there are reasons that they don't want to. It's not something they're looking forward to doing, going and meeting with a financial planner. So I think you've got to dig into that and try and find out what those reasons are.
Yeah, and there's any number of reasons. One is fear of losing money. One is fear of being ripped off. Unfortunately, the small percentage of unscrupulous advisors, if you can call them that, in our industry, get the majority of the headlines. Yep. I can understand. I can understand why people don't want to do that. I can. Besides that, like we've just done a podcast on people don't enjoy they probably put going to the doctor
Yeah. Yeah.
to get poked and prodded as a more enjoyable experience than talking about money.
Yes.
So I can understand. I can understand that.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you need to do. Well, it helps to be healthy, like to be financially healthy.
Yeah.
You know, to speak with a good financial advisor.
I think so. Yeah. That's I guess a good point is that there's not just and often what people say and what they really mean are probably two different things. So you know, if you're pushing your spouse, hey, we need to go and see a financial advisor, and your spouse is pushing back, saying, no, you know, I'm just going to go and see some. What if he's a rip-off merchant? What if he's dodgy? And, you know, what if he's not going to do the right thing? And that might be one issue, but the other issue might be that, oh, I just don't want to go and I don't want to have to go and think about it because, as we've talked about, it's a daunting thing to have someone sit down and reduce your life to a spreadsheet, if that makes like your whole 30 years of working history and all of your financial efforts to be reduced to here's a spreadsheet, here's where you are now, here's where you're going to be at retirement. That's what you are, kind of thing. I think it's daunting in that way that we don't want that, and to some degree for a lot of people, I think they don't necessarily want to know where they are going to be in 10 years' time, and that's you see it very often with people, as you touched on there with medical things, is that there's a lot of people that just go, well, if something's going to happen to me, I just don't want to know about it. I'd actually rather just sort of pass away suddenly in my sleep and not have any inkling that's coming. Whether that's rational or not is a separate issue. It's again, you can understand the concern or the thing of if we're cruising along quite happy right now, if we go and meet with someone who's going to tell us that, hey, things are going to be terrible in 10 years' time and you guys aren't going to be where you thought you were going to be and doesn't look good for you, you'd almost rather just go, I'd rather have the next 10 years of peace of mind and then deal with it as it plays out.
I think that's a genuine fear.
Yeah.
I've said numerous times that I've never met a financial hopeless case. Like I'm yet to meet someone who I can say,
there's nothing
we can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
well,
I think
we've touched on this before here times. We live in Australia. You cannot starve. You cannot starve in Australia. It just doesn't happen. So,
well, I met with someone, potential new clients the other day, and they had quite a detailed conversation with Kylie, our director of financial doing. Kylie's got this unique ability to get information out of people. They just volunteer it to her, and in Kylie's notes that she had given me with her conversation with these people prior to them coming to see me was that they'd done some silly things in the past with their money, what they considered silly things. This was their own words, and they're a little bit embarrassed about it now. They came to see me. I'm not interested in the past. I'm only interested in what they have now, how long they've got to go, what we can do to, so that didn't even come up. I think that is a concern for people. Your point there, I think, is a really big concern for people, is that the fear of actually being told that they're not in the position that they think they may be, and that there's not much that can be done. There's plenty that can be done. There's the first meeting that people have with us. The feedback that we get from almost everyone is that was a really enjoyable experience because it's very high level. And we're looking purely at, okay, here's where you're going to get to. Hey, what if we did this? If you did this a little bit differently, and we did these three things, then you'd be in a much better position, and then you'd be able, the flow and effect of that would be, you can draw enough income to live the retirement of your lifestyle.
That's another good point, is that I think people's fear is you're going to go and meet with a financial planner or a financial advisor, or even whether they're talking about it as a couple. People's fear is one of the fears is to be dictated to, and they think that they're going to come and see a financial advisor, and the advisor's going to say you have to do this, this, and this, and that's just not how those conversations tend to go, because as we've talked about a lot, it's all about trade-offs. So you get at the end of that meeting, the position that we want to leave people in is where they sort of know roughly where they're on track to be, and roughly what are the levers that they can pull, and what are the different choices that they could make now that will impact their position in the future. And now, I've said this before a heap of times, it's not our job to tell them what what they need to do. It's their money, it's their life now, it's their life in the future. It's their choice as to which trade-off they're willing to make around that. So it's not about us saying you must do X, Y, and Z. It's about us saying if you do X, Y, and Z, this is where you'll end up, and you then have an option as to how important is that to you. So I think that's probably the first part of convincing your spouse to see a financial advisor is to really dig into what's stopping. What is the main pain point there, and again, don't just assume they're being difficult, because they may be, but there probably is a genuine concern there that until you work out what that is, you're not going to bully someone into doing something they don't want to do. And even if you do, it's not going to be a good outcome for anyone. You need to sort of dig into what is their concern and how do we address that before we go and make that step. Part two, I would say, for that is to communicate it or make it clear as possible that this is a reversible thing. I think that's part two of the fear, is that we're going to get on this treadmill of, okay, we've booked in to see a financial planner, and then next thing you know, it's going to be we're doing X, Y, Z, and there's no way to get off anywhere along the way. And I think we've talked about this before. The whole the way that we try and communicate that is to say to people, our first meeting is just a 1 hour Zoom meeting at no cost or obligation. So if at the end of that meeting, we've communicated where you're at and where you're likely to be, and these are some of the things that you could do, and you get to the end of the meeting, you go, well, I don't want to do any of those things. I just want to keep doing what we're doing. That's completely fine. You go your own way, and that's there's no skin off anyone's nose.
And the thing is, we actually don't even make contact.
Yeah.
We do that meeting.
Yeah.
We put a summary together, and we put a quote for our fees along with the value that we believe that we can add.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're emailing someone every week saying,
no.
Make a decision. We just say, here it is. If you'd like to come back to us with any questions that you may have, or if you'd like to come back to us and let us know that you want to move on to the next stage or you want to become a client, the ball's in your court. We're certainly not in the habit of putting the pressure on anyone. So would say have a talk to the reluctant partner. If you're listening, and obviously if you're listening, you're at least the partner that's
more
interested.
Engaged. Yeah.
So have a talk to them. Reach out to us at podcast@mo50.com.au, and would be only too happy to arrange that 1 hour Zoom meeting. It's very, very what we say, it's no cost or obligation, but it's really, really I guess less daunting by doing it via Zoom is the feedback that we get, as opposed to actually walking into someone's office. So certainly reach out at podcast@mo50.com.au. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.